Hi, welcome. Good to see you. If you guys could maybe put my slides on here. Okay, everybody's here. So, hi, welcome to the to my class. It's a pleasure to be here. It's actually not my first class that I'm teaching in Indonesia. I taught 2 days ago, already ago in Bandung. And I taught actually online also for about 400 students a class 4 years ago about the previous research that I was doing in 4 years ago about slightly different topic. So I'm from Rotterdam. My name is Piotrek. Usually this is a little bit a surprise for me. And normally I'm one of those teachers who completely flip the classroom. So most of the time, I'm never really giving speeches to the students. I don't talk for hours. I can talk for hours like Fidel Castro. I'm Eastern European. So, you know, I have the background of being able to like talk for 10 hours. But that's not what I like. Most of the time, I'm having my students, so I'm doing consultations, discussing individual research reports of students or group work on various topics, circular economy, purpose economy, where students either work with companies, some organizations, advise them. You know, we talk for a long time about how do you talk to your stakeholder? Do you understand the problem? What kind of questions did you ask? Or in my research classes, you know, we talk really for weeks. Do you actually understand the problem that you're trying to resolve? Do you have, you know, can you explain the theories that you're going to apply? But on individual level, that works much better. However, that doesn't work with 500 students. So don't worry, I will take you through my, you know, from my basically current research that I'm doing on purpose economics. So just to give you some kind of background, actually I'm a PhD in philosophy. So I'm a bit more of a generalist. I also like to teach my students about more systemic issues. One thing, of course, we are in a business school. So we are, you know, you need to understand the insights of organization, how it operates, etc. But actually, you also need to understand how the outside world works, how people outside you think, how the economy functions. But these are all crucial skills that are not, you know, actually fundamental also for entrepreneurs. So yeah, that's my background. I've been always, you know, trying to understand. Of course, we've been teaching classes on globalization, but also, you know, even circular economy. You have to understand the broader systems in which it works. So this will be also a little bit the topic of my talk. So just to, yeah, there's actually, I'm also a little bit, so I'm writing, of course, I'm in philosophy, economics. I'm also on an advisory board of an organization that organizes the ecosystem for social enterprises in Rotterdam. So we have an organization that basically tries to connect social entrepreneurs, also big multinational companies that are based in Rotterdam, also community organizations, bring them all together somehow and make new things happen. Well, that's not easy. Actually, it's pretty complicated. There's a lot of things going well, but there's a lot of things going wrong. So also for that, we need to, you know, we need a little bit also of academic knowledge to understand, right? What happens? What are the processes that, you know, allow for this collaboration to happen, but also what are the processes that are not working? So just to give you insights, oh yeah, this is the program for today. So, you know, first, actually, the bigger question, and I noticed in Bandung that things that we take really for granted already because of our education might not be entirely the case here. So I have to double check it. Issues like climate change, social issues. What are they? These are the topics that I think you need to understand first before we go into the topic of how to actually organize a systematic response to them. And that is social economy. And then we're going to talk about a bit more institutional analysis of social economy, right? So what are the ways in which people act and think? What motivates them to behave or act in a certain way? Again, crucial skill, crucial understanding to engage in stakeholder management, for example. Okay, so I hope it will help you out a little bit. I have way more to talk about. I have also a case, but I will have to see if I will be able to get there, right? So we also have limited time, so I will try to see how far we're going to get. So far, so good. Please, of course, we will have a question round, but I talk maybe a bit too quick. I might, might be sometimes a bit too abstract, because these are a bit more, let's say, maybe also topics you might not be entirely used to all the time, being a business student. So if you have any questions, if you don't understand something, just raise your hand. It's really no problem. I really appreciate it. Okay, so please do it. Okay? Okay, there we go then. So my current research, so that you know, basically this I have a recent, it's a divergence. I'm doing it now for I think 1.5 years, just entirely just this topic. So we have an ecosystem for social economy. Ecosystem means there is some kind of institutions around companies that are trying to let's say generate different kinds of impact. Of course, you're familiar with the SDGs, etc. So I hope maybe the topic of social economy, social enterprises is familiar to you. But it's a growing, let's say, subsection, very small subsection of the whole, let's say, business community in Rotterdam. Startups, smaller companies that are not only trying to generate as much economic profit, but actually way more social and generate environmental impact. Also happens in Indonesia, of course. But that's what we are trying to strengthen. Small companies, they need help, right? So they need to be helped to work with government. They need to be assisted, or there must be structures to work with big multinational companies so that they will be able to, let's say, generate not only income for themselves, but actually also the social value, let's say. And that's, again, not easy. So for this, you have to know how this kind of system functions. This is the ecosystem. There's some kind of reality where those organizations exist in. You need some kind of systematic analysis. What do they need? And that comes from finance. It's about financing, but it's also about knowledge. That's why they are working with us. It's also about recognition, politics. So there's a lot of elements there. Okay, but first things first. Why actually this whole topic of social economy even pops up? Why are we talking about those SDGs? Why are we talking about environment? Why are we talking? Why do we want companies actually? At least in Europe, it's straight. I mean, it's much more clear. I think for Indonesia, for countries where economies are, in a growing phase, that's a bit more complicated. But there's more and more people believing, hey, wait, okay, nice profit generation, important, but actually there are other things that are really important. So there's a growing, let's say, awareness that some kind of shift towards running and doing business a bit differently, it's really fundamental, right? You cannot just keep on going as we are doing now with generating, billion tons of plastic, a lot of pollution, etc. That I think you living in Jakarta are pretty aware of, seeing just the intensity of what happens here. Why? Why is this shift happening? Of course, clear, climate change, right? This is really, a fundamental topic. In the Netherlands, it's pretty much straightforward. Country is below the sea level. There are already islands on the ocean disappearing. Netherlands with 1.5 meters, we can take up to 1.5 meters rise of the sea. More will be really difficult, if not impossible to maintain. I think Jakarta is also already pretty much sinking, right? So it's not. What do we do? This enable. I requested something, but I don't know. Did I request? No. So here, then things start to pop up. Like this happens, right? Everybody talks about SDGs. Oh yeah, I've been teaching a lot of classes on circular economy in the past, but yeah, it's pretty difficult, right? How to organize recycling of all this plastic that we're using, for example. A lot of companies try to do it. Very, very difficult. Eventually, we're starting to realize that. That might not be enough, right? So there's a growing group of people saying, hey, actually we need to adjust the whole economic model. where pursuing of constant economic growth should be slowed down. We call this degrowth economics. That's what I'm also trying to do. And this degrowth economics, a couple of components, right? So you really need to decrease material throughput, right? So how much materials are we using in the economy? Very important, but it's actually not so easy done. So there's all kinds of solutions, taxations, etc. But that's not, sometimes it's not working, right? So the other thing is, that's why actually I moved away a little bit from circular economy only and moved towards purpose economics or social economy, because you actually want to, you know, also have some kind of DNA transformation inside the companies where they will also work a bit differently, right? Pursuing really these other more social goals, it actually also means that you have a very different idea about how to run the company. And to me, for example, social enterprises are those kind of companies that for the first time actually try to figure out, you know, hey, we are generating social value. We are not employing people. We are helping people who have trouble. We have, you know, we are supporting local communities. And for them, this is really the core of what it means to run a company. Those kind of companies, right? So they basically spend time not on production and consumption of and generation of consumption of material products, but they organize their economy around production and consumption of community life, of doing something else together. So that's why for me, social economy is a very important topic. Next, of course, circular economy. Circular economy is really only about a bit more about running the business a bit more efficiently. Purpose economics, social economy, it's also about really rethinking a bit further the DNA of companies, so allowing them to pursue a bit different goals. A bit idealistic, it's very difficult to reach. There's not so many companies willing to do it, but we try, and I think there is a transformation happening, right? And for that also you need things like ecosystems, organizations working together to transform it. I think, do you know this kind of graph? I don't want to spend too much time about it. This is just the background for degrowth economics, just showing that basically in the current world we are going to we are exceeding in terms of natural resources use the planetary boundaries by far. Some little changes are, maybe could minimize the growth. But we actually need to go much further. Kate Raworth is one of the famous, let's say, economists writing about the topic. But we are far from it. There is a graph, so that's why that's one part of the frustration. We have relative and absolute degrowth. We want to be in the situation of absolute decoupling, meaning we're really starting to use much less natural resources. There are not so many countries that are doing it. I think China recently made really big steps. They are already, at least even with growth, they are, let's say, on the flat level in terms of use of energy, but not sure for if it works for the other resources yet. Okay, that's the background from ecological side. There is, of course, there are the issues, other issues. This is for Europe, of rising inequality, of wealth accumulation in smaller groups of people. This is the cumulative growth of income inside, different income groups. Probably pretty much clear for Indonesian that this is what is happening. Hopefully the blue line is actually the lower one is not going down, although probably there's also some. I'm not going to explain this because this is might be a bit too. But this is the stuff I assume you guys can read, right? So the basically statistics of also crucial skill. Again, if you're entrepreneur, read your Financial Times, understand the numbers. If you cannot do it, it's so much more difficult to understand what happens around you that it's. Yeah. Okay, that's one thing that we are busy with it. So of course, also trying to figure out how to, right? So how to minimize those differences. We have also same kind of issues in the Netherlands. It's also one of the reasons why social economy, at least, so I will talk a bit more about Rotterdam. That's a city in the Netherlands, one of the poorest cities in the Netherlands, with a quarter of the children in high schools who go hungry to school, for example, or live. Of course, it's relative poverty. So it's maybe the situation uncomparable to Netherlands. There's a lot of kids also without proper, for example, chances of getting good education, growing, exclusion. So it's not a, ideal society, to say the least, right? So there are all kinds of mechanisms why people cannot participate. You could say that's part of the, let's say, problems that need to be tackled. I won't be tackling, I don't think I will be discussing this too much. There are all kinds of, if you're an economist, this is the stuff my students sometimes write about, how to tackle those issues. Degrowth economists, they have ideas about macroeconomic solutions, right? With much more stronger intervention on the state level. We are in a business school, so I think I will skip it for what it is. But taxation system, so whenever you have economics, people like Piketty, for example, suggest different kinds of taxations. That could be some of the solutions. We are here in business school, so we are looking a bit more about social economy, solutions from bottom up, finding a communal economy. For that, you need to start to think a bit differently, right? So all kinds of, we talk about this a society in which all kinds of groups have to start working together somehow to generate solutions. That's some kind of background for the social economy. So once you're starting to analyze what happens, you have to figure out, okay, I'm working with various groups of people, various institutions, various logics, the way they think, the way they act. So you have to slowly unravel, okay, why, what are they doing, for what purpose? Only if you're prepared for that, you can actually, how to interact with them. The Pestov triangle, so it tries to differentiate different areas inside the society or economy. We have, of course, the state, very important in the Netherlands, right? Plays an important role, influences the whole economy. You work with the market, right? So big companies, smaller companies, some are more profit-oriented, others a bit less, but you're also always engaging the community. Somehow, working together, you try to basically that's fun. Sometimes what I'm doing, my student, map this for your organization. What are your stakeholders? Which part of the triangle are they belonging to? What is the logic behind their actions? What do they want? So you have to understand, for community, they will have very different ideas about how to engage. You will have very different ideas, what they want, what are their capabilities, what can they think about. So this is the starter, right? So this is where you're starting to analyze this ecosystem. The organizations I'm working with, so I'm working with this ecosystem organizer. They are a bit more in the of course in the hybrid sphere, but they're also in the let's say closer to the state already, because it's a kind of partially state-funded organization, but still maintaining some kind of independence. Okay, how am I doing with time? We're doing well. So far, any questions about this? Any clarification needed? No, not yet. Okay. So this is where we are starting. This is the stakeholder analysis. Then if you move further, you have to start also a little bit to think, okay, with those different stakeholders, those different groups, they are coming from somewhere. So there is some kind of history behind it. That's really not a topic like I know also business students, are pretty much used to and are thinking about, but I think it's really crucial, right? To understand where are people coming from, why are they thinking in a certain way, and it will allow you to to understand the thing. So basically history, there are different ways to historicize the social economy, but these are all like, let's say, kind of layers present within the society, right? So I will talk about the Netherlands a bit more, and you will see that if you will historicize, right, we have, of course, over time, different economic systems, different ways of organizing the economy. The pre-industrial economy, Netherlands, I think, started to really industrialize beginning of the 19th century. We had also periods, of mercantilism, etc. But let's to simplify the things, right? The pre-industrial economy, more feudal, big landowners. But you also already have a city life with some guilds, some artisans. So you have to figure out, okay, how do people take care of each other? What are they doing? What they think. So of course we have guilds, some forms of organization already inside the cities, right? So all the artisans already in the Middle Ages, they were working together already, helping each other out, having some kind of, mutual deals. It was not always individual entrepreneurs. Even in these situations, those entrepreneurs were already somehow connected, already negotiating with the local, let's say, government officials, aristocracy, etc. So already then you had some moments of organizations happening. Not only was it happening in the cities, it was also happening in, of course, on the level of a village. We call this the commons. Every, village, that's also, of course, in Indonesia, pretty straightforward, right? There is a mutual organization of the economy, right? So there are, ways in which you collaborate. In the Netherlands, it is about common property of land, but also actually how the whole country came about. We call it the main. People together working those small villages on basically constructing the dikes, maintaining the dikes. That's not an individual thing. It was also not run by the state. It's a mutual agreement on the level of the small communities. Strongly present also in, let's say, the mental DNA in the Netherlands. We do it together. There's a sea over there. If we don't do it, water floods us. We have to protect ourselves. I think, again, in Indonesia, I don't have to explain it with all the rice terraces, etc. That's also something present directly. In terms of, let's say, the way people also collaborate, of course, we have religious charities for social economies, for social purposes. Well, this starts to change, of course, right? So we have, of course, it was introduced by the Dutch here in the Netherlands, in Indonesia. I think beginning in, let's say, 19th century, but we start, the model changes, feudalism passes away, we get more capitalists, of course, has different stages, right? But we start on a smaller scale, with smaller enterprises, smaller companies that are starting to organize economy, start to sell products, with, but much smaller still individual entrepreneurs. How does it affect, so what happens with, of course, industrialization? That definitely happened in Europe, 19th century, with increase of urban poverty, also meaning that there's all kinds of organizations start to arise to self-organize. One of those things are, of course, the cooperations that I think you're pretty familiar with also here in Indonesia, because it's also one of the models to run companies here, right? Together, we join forces. We do things together as a group. So not just one individual entrepreneur. No, we will do things with a joint group of people. Pretty difficult to organize. There's a lot about it. But this is already what starts to happen and can happen within, we call it a competitive capitalism stage. So basically where, on the smaller scale, you can start to cooperate. Workers' cooperatives, right, starting to produce things, consumers who are buying together things together, set up shops together, credit organizations joining forces, and then being able to work together. So that's one of the things, in which the social economy, this kind of collaboration emerges, but it's also made possible by the way that the system functions. It also leads to the different specific relationship to your surroundings. So here we see, for example, in this stage, of course, those company owners who have 1-2 factories, they realize, hey, okay, I have to really talk like this. They start to realize, hey, I need to really, I'm operating in an environment, right? So there is actually, I have my workers around me. But, I cannot allow, that was what's happening in Europe, in Rotterdam, permanent hunger. I cannot allow that they are all sick every time. So they start to figure out, wait a minute, we have to do something. So this kind of paternalistic behavior starts to emerge from the company side. We will take care of the workers, right? That starts end of the 19th century. Famous case is Philips. I don't know if you know the Philips company. One of the biggest, used to be one of the biggest, let's say, electronics multinationals in the world. Before, I think, China, or actually Japan, and later China took over everything, and South Korea. They are now highly specialized, actually, in medical equipment. So they evolved further into much more actually advanced kind of technology, medical technology in particular. Still, the region where they are, it's one of the most productive and technically advanced sections of the Dutch economy. Anyway, this guy who was running it, that's one entrepreneur, figured out, hey, a minute, they are all sick, my workers. So he started to construct housing, right? So he started to build schools for his workers. So that starts, so basically that's a stage, you could say, until the Second World War, this is how the system was operating. Individual help, some collaboration, and paternalistic behavior. That starts to change a lot after, in Europe, it's after the Second World War, where basically things start to grow more and more. So things become really big, right? We have big multinationals, big banks, joint forces, investment funds, nowadays shadow banks like BlackRock, those kind of organizations, they are super efficient, right? They produce on scale that those little smaller entrepreneurs could never compete with. They cannot now. We of course we don't have only monopoly capital. Of course, there's a lot of, you guys, some of you are studying entrepreneurship. No, of course you will set up your own company, act a little bit more like this competitive capitalist, but you're still, confronted with this big reality of, economies of scale of big multinational companies. Right, so this is what happened, but it's a pretty fundamental change from the perspective of this communal economy, the social economy, the way you're organizing and working together. Because those guys really, basically because of the efficiency reasons, they know what to do, let's say, and basically, that transfer a couple of things. There is a response, right? Because there's so much on this bigger scale, state actually also started to respond. So they also figured out, what? Then we also have to upscale everything. We call this the welfare state in Europe. The state taking care of all the social issues. If you're unemployed, if you are hungry, if you need an education but don't have money, this is a responsibility of the state, of government to take care of you. They have all the institutions, all the power, all these big resources that I don't have, you don't have, the community doesn't have, that even those individual entrepreneurs don't have. They will do it, right? And they started to do it. They were doing it pretty well. We have... of course, in Europe, decrease in poverty levels, etc., increases of welfare, life expectancy skyrocketing after the war. So a lot of positive, let's say, changes. There are also some negatives. I will come back to this in the context of the entrepreneurship and this communal economy. But this is what happens. It also affected all those. So just to briefly, the cooperatives, right? So all these local organizations, people who try to build, within a community, their own things, they actually started to disappear. So all the little corporations that Holland, Netherlands, actually a lot of corporations, they all started to disappear or joining forces to become even bigger and bigger to compete against the other big, companies. Consumer cooperatives, for example, they could not compete. There are companies like Unilever. You don't compete with Unilever. There is just no way. Or you compete only if you are the same size. So a lot of them upscaled, but it has already, of course, a lot of consequences because you are less connected to your local community. You're much farther away from the place where you were starting at. So again, so a big transformation. I have here a graph from a actually museum we went to Donny together with, from Cooperation Museum, and then you see, we are working the cooperative, but our duty is to increase just the profits and be a more efficient, work harder, so that you sense this kind of idea that all those cooperatives started to figure out, wait a minute, there is so much pressure. We just have to go with basically the current state of affairs. Again, this it's not completely over, right? So these are all layers, but around 1980s with people like Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, this starts to change, right? So a lot of people say it's not really an efficient system, costly. So we call this period neoliberalism, where basically the more American ideas also in Europe come in, they become much more important. Where we figure out, we say, hey, individual is way more important, right? Individual competition, that needs to be stimulated. People, should take their own responsibility for everything. But that's a kind of phase of individualism. So where basically more and more is becomes responsibility of each individual. So it's still within the stage, let's say, of the monopoly capital, so big companies, but there also the state starts to think differently about its role. We retreat, the society, or actually companies, need to take over everything. Right? And yeah, that has consequences, of course. That has consequences for the social economy, because on the one hand, okay, so if we can do it and they really rely on us, of course, those things start to become also responsibility of the community. If you are, having difficulty in finding job, you will all of a sudden not only just directly go to the labor office and ask, give me a job, but you will, start to think, okay, maybe there's some kind of NGO that helps me out. Or there are people who figure out, hey, there is no work for those people. We have to organize somehow because, the state doesn't do it anymore. So we will start an NGO to help out. Or we'll start some kind of foundation, organization to take care of things. So that's a moment when basically, new things are starting to pop up. And it's a little bit also based here with the some kind of funny graph from the Dutch newspaper. They talk about those phases, so we have the Vadertjesstaat, means the father state, taking care of everybody. We have then we have the neoliberal phase. That's privatization of government, privatization of all the resources. You just look at targets, of course, because you have to perform. And then now we're moving to the more participation phase. So that's something newly happening. Again, how fundamental it is difficult to say, but there is a change, right? So I think this kind of over-reliance on individual responsibility, we do it yourself, or we'll go back to this idea of a paternalistic, just, rich person who takes care of the community, that people start to realize, hey, this is really a bit problematic. So I think this ecosystem thinking starts around like 15 years ago, let's say. More and more aware, we call it participation society also. So which could be some kind of mix between welfare state and, strong state, and then just this liberalism or everything is completely on the individual, but it also generates a lot of problems, right? But let's say that, basically there is some kind of a shift happening. Where it will be successful, that's another story, because we encounter a lot of problems. There's a lot of people who just say, please go back to the old welfare state. They are much more efficient. We need a big investments from the government, investment funds. Just don't, pretend that some small participation from the society will solve problems. But there's a lot of people also who say, yeah, nice, you can have those big, broad rules and arrangements, but you also need to always have it bottom up. So you need a local engagement for things to start to function. So this some place we are in with a lot of problems that are happening. But this cooperation, it is also a bit of problematic, right? Because it's not so easy. So if you look at this history, just looking for Rotterdam, so that you have an idea, right? So I'm talking blah blah blah. But this is also important for you if I'm engaging in this organization that I'm working with, I'm talking to people in the ministry, right? In the municipality, big companies, small enterprises, but also workers, right? Poor people in the streets who are also in communities have to be engaged. You have to recognize where their ideas are coming from, right? So if you would look, layer by layer, just, not to overcomplicate things, is this early mutualism still present? Right, so this idea you have, old village kind of life in a city. Is this even possible, or did we really completely move to all those separated, atomized individuals who never interact with each other? luckily, the more and more, I'm engaged in the topic. For Indonesia, maybe it's abstract, right? For Europe, this is really an issue, right? We moved way further in this individualization of the society, right? But it still happens, right? So there are some networks of care. A lot of people, if you remember the Pest of Triangle on the community side, far away from the state, far away from the market forces, they help each other, right? They cook for each other, take care of their children. It still exists. Pretty small scale in the poorest neighborhood, that's still there. That's something to build on, right? This is if you are running social enterprises. This is something, if you want to work with those kind of communities, you have to trust first that it's there, and also trust that those people know how to do this. So whenever you're trying to organize, for example, social enterprise, also give some kind of power and find those networks, the way those people interact together, to empower them, right? To empower, but to use them also when you're running this kind of organization. And that's very difficult, actually. Not all the students, not all the social entrepreneurs can do it, because they think, oh yeah, these are just stupid people, they don't know what to do. They hardly can read and write. If I'm talking to them, I don't understand them. Or they, that's basically really what people think, right? So even in this kind of community organizations, but or organizations that are, for example, working with the big multinationals, but trying to have more workers, so upscale and trained workers, they also have this idea: those people don't know what they're doing. We are the experts. We solve everything. I studied, in Venus University, so I will help out. Very difficult problem to shift. This mentality, this lack of trust towards other people in Europe. I'm not so sure how it looks like in Indonesia. My hunch is it's pretty much the same. Yeah. But it still exists, right? So we have those networks of care. Then if you look further, this other layer, we talk about this moment when individual entrepreneur fixes things. I'm starting my own company. I'm starting my corporation. I have the power to do things. I will make money. Yeah, that's definitely present, right? So we have a lot of currently, for example, people from a better educated. There starts all kinds of corporations, right? So we have energy corporations, people buying together solar panels for the whole neighborhood and managing it, or buying a land together and building, growing their own foods together. Smaller cooperatives, so they are starting. It's not like huge, right? So it's, I think, uncomparable with scale to what happens in Indonesia, because they have way more cooperatives, as far as I understand. So it's there. It also means, if it's there, there's also other stakeholders in the ecosystem who also think, along those lines. So, for example, there will be also a lot of people who still expect from the worker, for example, to play this role of this paternalist. I cannot do it, but you're the big guy running things, you know how to do it. So if you're talking, they will expect, they will not take action. They will expect from you or from the educated one or running the business to take up action. So, which is a normal behavior. At the same time, if you want to run organizations where cooperations is much more fundamental, you need to change it, because it's not a way, where people doing it feel empowered. So you need all kinds of mechanisms, and that's also, with social enterprises frequently happens. Yeah, you have to devise all kinds of tools to stop this kind of expectations of paternalism, right? So to really empower those people in action. But it's definitely there. You will hear it. Paternalism, for example, another story that's, Donny maybe even went to the museum when he was in Rotterdam. We have also paternalistic behavior still from big owners of big multinational companies. We have in Rotterdam one of the wealthiest family, I think second wealthiest family in the Netherlands. They own half of the harbor in Rotterdam, but I think also big shares of harbors in Singapore, etc. So these are people for 200 years. They have a lot of money, and they also, let's say, spend it in Rotterdam, right? So we are, in a sense, blessed, right? In a sense, not that's more political issue, but they support a lot of social projects also. So a lot of social enterprises actually in Rotterdam, that's also true, are fully dependent on the money from the wealthiest family in Rotterdam, right? They're really supporting within the ecosystem, 20-30% of initiatives somehow get money from guys who own harbors around the whole world. So it's still there, this dependency on paternalism, and also then, that also changes, for example, the way municipality acts. They also expect them to come and help, and okay, so you have this. Then we have, of course, a layer of this big welfare state. Again, that's also a bit dismobilizing, right? So it's great they're taking care of you, but the mentality is particularly also among for example, the people who are working in the municipality. You go there as an entrepreneur and think, hey, we have a good way, we can help people they've been, people without job, excluded from the society. They cannot find the jobs for 10 years, but I have a very good program. I will work with them, we'll do this and that. In Rotterdam, it's a pretty significant problem, as I told you, right? There's really, it's a city, harbor city with a lot of migrants constantly coming in. So exclusion, social exclusion, is really around 25%, people who really have difficulty of participating. So they really need to be taken a little bit more by hand, need some kind of a proper approach to get there. But yeah, if you are an entrepreneur, figure out, I have a system, I know how to work with them, I can build trust, fundamental thing, right? Trust that those people will come to you and work with you. I know how to do it. And then you go to the municipality and say, hey, great idea. Look, I'm an entrepreneur. I will make also some money even, but I also need some help for startup, etc. They'll say, yeah, great. But, so what is your, how many, how quick will you make profit? Or, what is your ratio of, of how many, can you generate of this kind of people? Can you generate per month? Targets. Afraid of basically, and with the idea, but we've been doing it for 50 years. We have everything here, and we have, we give unemployment benefits and everything. Problem is those things are not working, right? So they are working only for a very limited group of people. So you will see there's a big frustration about every social entrepreneur in Rotterdam is this municipality that's really having this mentality, lack of trust. So it's a big, also once you know it, and that's why I'm working also with the municipality, is like, what can we do to change this mentality, right? How can the municipality itself start to think a bit more in this ecosystemic way? Trust the society, they will generate solutions, take a risk, maybe from those 20 entrepreneurs, 5 will really squander the money and there will be nobody helped, but there will be 15 doing great things. Okay, maybe the percentage is a bit lower of those great things, but that's a big challenge, really. So you need to also mentally prepare them. That's also something, if you're doing stakeholder management and you're from the organizations that are running those projects, you really need to be aware of it. You have to be tackling it and directly going against it. Also knowing this is what they want, but I have a strategy to change their thinking. I'm sure in Indonesia it will be pretty much the same. All right, so with all the tackling of government. And then the last but not least, of course, we have our American face that's also pretty much present. And that is basically also within municipality, still a lot of people believe society together cannot solve many problems. A lot of things are individual responsibility. So they will really think of solutions on individual level. There's just this individual who, for example, is unschooled, who cannot participate in the society. He needs to be helped by himself. We give him a little bit of money. Ideas within entrepreneurship are, for example, microcredit. You give one individual microcredit and they will grow. That's like very pretty much focused on one individual. Yeah, that's not really what's working, because people never work by themselves. So you need to find this kind of communal solutions. Yeah, so this is pretty much present. Are there any questions about this? Pressing things. Yeah?
Can you film this? Okay. How would you personally choose to measure the social impact, and how do we ensure the community remains at the heart of the decision-making process of the social economy in Rotterdam?
Thank you for a very good question. It's a very it's also a very difficult question, right? So first, how do you measure it? That's exactly the problem where we are at. That's really at the core of the whole social economy topic. Measurement, right? So for many things, of course, we have something like social return on investment. So if you are, for example, running a big construction company, they are already obliged, if they're constructing, to help a number of people who cannot find jobs, right? So unemployed people, to engage them. So they can show, hey, in our projects, we helped 10 people who were in the files and being listed as unemployment. Now they have employment. And you can then, as a big company, tell to the government, you see, we helped, 10, 20 people without work, and now they have it, right? So there are all these kind of measures are happening. The biggest issues, and that's really a problem with the social entrepreneurs, is that those things are not really super easily quantifiable. Because there are, for example, if you talk about unemployment, again, in Rotterdam, we talk about 15% of people. There are layers of unemployment. There are people who never find jobs, and there are people who are just, up and down between the line of unemployment. So the problem is the moment you start to figure, and that's really the frustration of the social entrepreneurs, because they actually have ideas how to help, but the people a bit more further away from the society. But they are not really, so you will probably have for example, much less quantitative success, but qualitatively with the people who are much further away, you can reach much more. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, of course you can measure it. That's very important. That builds also trust. But a lot of things that are happening on the communal level are more of qualitative nature. So sometimes, and that's very difficult. So once you start to set up a whole system where everything is about measurement, you lose a lot. And this is like the biggest frustration we have now in Rotterdam, actually, because there are, people's needs are very different, right? So I don't know, if you talk about big problem in the Netherlands, is again loneliness of elderly, sometimes also young people. There are some kind of organizations helping also entrepreneurs, right? Trying to help them. But yeah, there are differences, right? It's not, how do you measure it even, right? Oh yeah, we have a, declining suicide rate or something, right? So you could find some measures, but it's sometimes difficult. That's actually, this is really the biggest problem. Once you start to think in this communal way, how to deal with this, right? And how to deal with also the trust. The trust that is given to you from the side of the government, but also from the bigger companies that give you the money to do things, right? To organize things. And this trust, normally, of course, it's easier to build based on quantitative data, social return on investment, but very frequently that's actually not enough. That's not what you need, because you need more personal ties and understanding what people do and why. Yeah, so so thank you for your question. Did I answer your question? Yeah? Okay. Other questions about this part, or you have the...
Which one, sir?
Huh?
Which one?
Oh, I have 15 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dr. Piotrek, for the opportunities. My name is Raihan Hawarizmi, and I'm majoring in international business management. In your presentation slide on the why social economy page, why does not green enough growth decrease or below 100, while greener growth increase so significantly, even above 100? Could you explain how that is possible and what the difference is between green and greener? If your opinion is nowadays we need to become more environmentally friendly and move towards zero carbon. However, I think one of the sector that contributes the most to economic growth is industries such as coal and mining. This sector might not be considered as a greener, but they still play an important role in supporting economic growth or GDP? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Okay, because I have one more, because it's a huge question. It's a very good question, right? It's a huge topic. I still wanted to discuss one thing with you before before we really go to the question round. So you talk about mining, and this is the biggest problem with, basically, I mean, Indonesia economy is of course dependent on natural resources, right? So it's very, I mean, you are really, the export product is coal, it's palm oil, very, environmentally depleting actually natural resources, and it's very difficult, if not impossible at this stage, to shift the economy to something else. That's the biggest problem. Let's call it like this, this whole degrowth economics is of course the most fundamental, and it has to start to happen up in North Europe and United States. Per capita, I mean, this stuff that is being mined here, that's burnt in the United States and in Europe and China, right? So actually the most structural things in terms of consumption, etc., yeah, they have to start to happen in the north, right? That this is where, I mean, per capita, the amount of pollution I'm generating is, okay, with Jakarta people, that's maybe a bit more complicated, but on average, right, I think, it's 5 times, 6 times more than you guys. But even if that would happen, if you would start using less natural resources for production, yeah, it is a problem actually for Indonesia also, because this is what your economy is dependent on. So, yeah, there is it's a structural fundamental problem, right? But I mean, if I had any kind of solution, I would give it to you, but we don't know. Yeah? We know we have to move in this direction. We know also, I think you can have the Indonesian economy that's less dependent on natural resources. There's also something existing like, actually it's called Dutch disease, which is dependency on natural resources of an economy, which is pretty much very problematic, right? So you could figure out that maybe there are ways of, regenerating economic growth in a different ways. But I will park it for a moment, okay? Then is that okay? The topic, maybe we can come back to this later, yeah? Last thing, because I still have like 15 minutes to talk or not. So I can still talk for a few hours, don't worry. But 10 more minutes. So I will leave they had another story about the Netherlands and about the different, again, if you go even deeper, what we were discussing about this history, there are in the other institutions, right? Within Europe, you even have different ways of organizing the economy, right? The Netherlands being the more, let's say, Rhineland model where coordination is much more present. But I will skip it. I wanted to talk about something I discussed in the past, and maybe because me being from the Netherlands, this might be also interesting for you, about cultural differences and how those affect ecosystems for social economy. How do they influence the way we are daily dealing with business and organizing those kind of things? So I don't know if you are aware with the Hofstede model. Anybody is aware of the dimensions of Hofstede? One person? No, more. Okay, so you had it in the class here. Okay, frequently used in business classes. A very, very simplified way of approaching the economics education and the way, culture functions. However, I think it still matters. I mean, these are things you probably have to pay attention to. We in the Netherlands, for example, would definitely have to pay more attention to this. Also in Rotterdam, we are a very multicultural city. 50% of the population is born or their parents were born outside of the Netherlands. So we have very big Muslim community from North Africa, a lot of people from South America, Eastern Europeans, South America from the, both former colonies. Indonesia also, not so much. We don't, the former people from Indonesia, I think, how to say it yet. No, they are also present. It is a problem. So this culture issue is also a topic because, for example, one of the issues we have is that migrant organizations don't want to really participate in the ecosystem for social economy. There's a lot of self-organization by the migrant communities, but they are really a bit further away from the more central ecosystem for the social entrepreneurs. If you would go and you'll see those meetings, you go to one place where it's more official, and there are only white people from the Netherlands, maybe 2 or 3 migrants, but that's it. And they feel comfortable together doing things. But there are all kinds of other, people who should be there, but who are not there. There are all kinds of reasons, again, to understand why does it happen. It's a crucial problem that everybody who's engaged in the ecosystem in Rotterdam wants to tackle, but we don't know yet how. I mean, one of the things you could do is looking a little bit about culture. So we have, of course, I can briefly just explain the power distance and how it affects basically doing business and doing this organizing in the Netherlands. You will see the blue is the Indonesian, purple is the Dutch. Power distance much lower clearly means we don't accept authority. All right? So it's impossible to have big bosses telling you what to do. You cannot, as if you are from municipality, say, hey, this is our program, great, this is how we're going to run it. If you are a business leader, you cannot say, hey, I figured this is really the best way to solve our problem. You exercise it. People don't accept it. If you will do it, you will have outrage, people protesting, people going against you. Which is nice sometimes, right? Because you feel empowered to say no to other people. From, of course, social economy perspective, it also means it's difficult to really do things because you need to talk with a lot of people to get things done. Again, then we always say, look at China, they just say, hey, we will build, we are just removing all the polluting companies outside of Shanghai, outside of Beijing because it's polluting. Nobody objects. Because they cannot object. That's the idea top down that has to be done. And all of a sudden, indeed, Beijing has much less smoke from the pollution. In Netherlands, impossible. You have to talk to everybody, negotiate, talk even more. After that, eventually everybody's tired. Some small steps are taken, but that's some kind of frustration that really emerges. So sometimes, some people are longing for a bit more of this kind of leadership, stronger decision making, definitely in times of what we could call crisis. On the other hand, and that's the other part of the deal, if you talk about ownership, people owning the processes and willing to contribute also individually, that's a bit easier to organize in the Netherlands because people will feel, no, I need to do it, right? The other people cannot decide for me. I will not just listen. So that's one of the things, right? So ideally, yes, but if in terms of efficiency, really a big problem. Other thing, also very important, that's really a big difference between Netherlands and Indonesia is the individual level of individualism. Of course, these are very general, general theories. But I think Indonesia being one of the most collectivist societies in the world, Netherlands will be by far one of the most individualist countries in the world, right? My life is my life. Nobody, decides what I'm doing. A family, nice that they are around, but they have nothing to say about my decisions. I wish I could say a bit more about, what my son is doing or my daughters are doing. There is no way. He's following his path, and there is no, my decisions are away from it. Great, fantastic, positive sides for entrepreneurship. So you have all this egoistic guys. I can do it. I'm myself entrepreneur. I will solve the issue. I know how to do it. They take the risk. They believe in themselves. They don't need to talk to anybody. They just go. Fail 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5th times it works. Americans also have it. So, which is great, right? So that's why we have a lot of, students finishing school. I'm starting enterprise. Who cares? I'll borrow some money or not. And then we'll see how it will work. They believe in it, right? So because it's really, that's a possibility. There's of course a downside to it, overconfidence, but also difficulty. That's also the problem for ecosystem that we have. We are trying to, for example, a couple of topics. I will not have time anymore to talk about it, but bring people together, entrepreneurs with community to work together. They go into one room, all of them, as individuals. Before they will form a group, a collective that takes decisions together, it will take a very long time. They don't get this idea of, hey, you know, I'm joining the meeting, we form a group, we are one. They don't understand it. So they also have all kinds of tendencies whenever, you know what, yeah, I'm not making so much profit out of it anymore. Yeah, we have one of the industrial parks in Rotterdam, right? Companies stepping in on one industrial area. They are separate islands. It's very difficult for them to even come to the idea. That's what everybody works on, right? So if you are doing industrial, not synthesis, but okay, right? So we're trying to bring them together. The most important part is just to start to feel, become a group together, you know, become, you know, you're just one together in this area. So build some kind of identity together. Because if you don't have it, they will do nothing. There won't be any trust. They will just leave whenever they don't like the situation. So that's really a very tough topic to overcome. My hunch is that it could be a bit more easy in Indonesia, where you could get this kind of identity. 3 more minutes, okay. Yeah, we'll finish this, I think, and then I will be fine. So I will just see how far we get. So that's you know, so these are downsides, but you have to be aware of it, right? That this will be really, like, once you're starting to operate, and bring people together, you have to be aware this will be one of your major struggles. To form a community, to build mutual trust, to allow those individuals to collaborate. Again, also one thing that I discussed yesterday with a professor from Bandung about this topic, of course, if you have a communal society and you have a group and people like to be in a group and they are not really individuals, they will have difficulty of being critical, because you will want to be everybody to be your friend. You don't want to say harsh things to a society, you know, people outside of you. But yeah, if you're working together and you're doing business with a whole group of people, of course there are conflicts of interest. So again, also for that, then if you're doing those kind of arrangements, yeah, you need to fix it, because you have to have a way in which to organize dissent. Right, to organize the people saying no to each other, or saying, no, this is good, but this is, I don't accept it anymore. Big problem, I think, for an individual, for a communitarian society. Just let me think what is also very important, I think. Okay, masculinity, that's actually, you know, so basically there are different ways of discussing it, or showing what it is. So Indonesia being moderate, Dutch being very feminine society, what does it mean? It's more about showing success, for example, right? So how important it is to perform and show it outside. Hey, I'm the guy who made it. You know, to make visible signs of success with all kinds of data also to prove it, right? Dutch society is a bit less so. So there's a lot of much more attention. It's not good to show off, to present your own results. Than in much more masculine societies. Like Germany, for example, we're next to Germany, but they are very different. Good and bad again. Good because it means that a lot of people in a company that work in a company, they think, hey, you know what, but those workers, people around me, I need to also take care of them. It should be nice. We should be nice to each other. A bit of this caring attitude is present. It's not only I'm doing work and I will have to perform and earn as much money as possible, or I will have to, you know, to reach those and those targets. There are other things that are also important. That's really a characteristic of a feminine society, right? So this kind of performance measurement, showing off, is not that important. Again, there's also big downsides to it. If you're working with young people like you who are starting social enterprises, they are good, they are caring, they are nice, but I mean, because they don't want to show off, they are a little bit, how to say it, too relaxed. You know, you as an entrepreneur, you also need this push. The Americans have it much more, right? So they have also, because of this, I mean, they are really also very masculine society. That pushes them also to go further, right? Not to accept, this is good, you know, I'm doing a little things, fine, you know, and everybody's happy, so we are all happy, and, you know, and we are going to be nice to each other. That really happens a little bit in the Dutch society, definitely in the context of the social economy, that also attracts certain groups of people. And this is also a big frustration because, yeah, this is difficult to change. If you're organizing, this is very difficult to change because yeah, ambition you cannot just, create out of nowhere. But you need all kinds of systems then again to motivate people to behave also. So feminine is great, right? I'm all into this kind of society, but you also sometimes need to have incentives to push people further. But I think having said that, I think, I think it one slide, I summarized it, but okay, I cannot see it anymore. I will just show the last slide where I have the consequences for the, the consequences, of those different kinds of cultural elements and how they influence the ecosystem for social economy. There are other nice ones. I had, of course, talk for another 2 hours about some cases from Rotterdam, but maybe I can just leave you with the picture of Rotterdam and some projects that should generate social return on investment in Rotterdam. But thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for Mr. Patrick for the insightful presentations. Now we will. Okay, so now we will move to the Q&A session. So any further questions for Mr. Patrick?
Okay, we have, you will do the mic, yeah? Okay.
Good morning, sir. My name is Kismas Masli from International Business Management.
Yes.
I have a question regarding how social economy versus response time. So
versus what then?
Response time. So
response time.
Yes. So there has been a lot of issues in the Netherlands in regards to, for example, the housing crisis and how businesses aren't able to respond fast enough to certain market conditions and aren't able to capitalize as much as other countries such as America or Canada, for example. And that is mainly due to what is being discussed here, which is the social aspects, right? The social economy, and how do we contribute back the social impact, the long-term impact. And there's a lot of analysis and there's a lot of time needed to finalize decisions. How do you think we should balance, especially in Rotterdam, because it's in comparison to other cities, it is still a very more pragmatic cities in comparison to Amsterdam, for example, or even other cities. How would you balance that between the response time to the social economy?
Okay, thank you very much. It's a very important topic. So I have a class, again, very frequently recurring topic in the research my students are doing. How do we change the housing market in the Netherlands? Why do we need to change it first? We have become from relatively cheap city, worker city, to one of the most expensive cities in the Netherlands. So how, I mean, one room costs now about, 800, 900 euros for a student, right? It used to be maybe 500 15 years ago. Yeah, the prices are crazy for Indonesian standards. So we have a lot of people who are no longer able to move out, just to give context of what you're saying, right? Who cannot move out from their house of their parents, where they were used to do it. A lot of overcrowded houses already. So, right, definitely in the poorer areas, you would say, oh, Netherlands, fantastic. No, we also have middle class still lives in this nice houses where you have, everybody has its own room. But Rotterdam being poorer city, 50% lives really with, few 2-3 kids in one room, for example, right? So that really happens. So it's a big problem. Again, just to give a little bit of history about this, we had, of course, kinds of solutions, right, to it. So we had I will come to that. I don't think I have a proper solution, but you will see, just to show it, to go back to this history and how this thing is started. So there is, of course, we don't have actually like this competitive capitalism that much. There are different countries having different models. For example, Belgium has way more like competitive capitalism where everybody can build his own house, or you have smaller constructors building houses. Probably Indonesia is just like that, right? So you have, if you have money, you get some kind of, permit, you will do it. In Netherlands, right? Very difficult. Sometimes they're now trying to reintroduce it, but there's much less space for this individual initiative. So why? Because we, of course, moved to this side. Monopoly capitalism with welfare state. So we had housing corporations that were small in the beginning, right? So from the previous stage, they become very, very big. Right? Welfare state, connect to the welfare state, also big construction companies. You cannot just go there. They have the contracts, they know how to build, they do it efficiently. But something happened there, right? So far, I think until this system was functioning, it was good with the housing market. We had a lot of social housing for poor people, for also less wealthy people. So it worked. But it changed a lot, right? So there's a lot of you, in the way I'm presenting, saying things to you, I'm already longing a little bit. That's also one of the stakeholders, right? I'm longing a little bit to this phase of welfare state where government builds all the houses. Everybody has its own house. I was born in Eastern Europe under communism. Basically, I was living in a neighborhood where below me, somebody was a regular worker. Upstairs was an ambassador. There was a teacher. There was some regular small policeman, right? So we were all in one housing compound. Everybody had the same size of house, built by the state. Am I longing for it? Not entirely, but it was safe. It was a nice communal society, and there were no people without housing. Very, very strong. I mean, welfare state in communism, that's pretty straightforward. That was also happening in the Netherlands, but that starts to a little bit, decrease, right? So, okay, so I'm saying a little bit more my background. I think still this kind of solutions for housing is probably one of the best. So I'm a little bit trusting the bigger state, but it also has its problems, right? So this changed, right? The problem in the housing market, a lot of people say that's just because of this neoliberalism. So those big companies, those big corporations, right? These are really corporations, have become, private enterprises. Or act like private enterprise. It has had to start to generate profits. So their DNA, this is what we are discussing, right? Their DNA of how they run business started to change. So, for example, in Rotterdam, one of the biggest housing corporations, they start to invest money on for options and for I'm losing the word, but speculating basically with the money because they have a lot of houses, so they could speculate as crazy. They squandered a lot of money because of this. They were making big profits for some times, but for later not. They stopped because of this logic entered this particular sector. That's basically, standard economics. Housing is a public good, right? They by reintroducing this logic, they really started to build different houses. So now in Rotterdam, because this logic has happened, those corporations, they build houses that generate more profit. Those are houses with more square meters, with higher price, higher profit margin. Meaning a lot of people who can only buy a small house, they are not provided for. So that's one of the causes, let's say. But is this the only? So the question is, what is my solution, right? So how to change it? I think indeed this all welfare state, definitely from economic theory, housing is a public good that should be, common property for the whole society. I think might be a good idea. But we also have some new systems, right? So we are also trying to figure out how we can go back, and those big corporations, housing corporations, can become a bit smaller again. So there's also a big movement in the Netherlands to reconstruct those little more community-based corporations that build houses. So a small group of people, 50 people, buy a land and create a compound. Again, of course, there is economic inefficiency behind it because this is not the level of the big corporation that constructs quick and big. But it has some kind of benefits behind it, and that's the community, right? That's what people want. If you are building and doing it together with a smaller group of people, you generate directly a smaller society together. You co-own the space, you co-develop it, you know each other. So there's a lot of this kind of development happening now that changes the way the housing market, and this big issue, right? This is the biggest social issue in the Netherlands, or one of the biggest, lack of housing, the prices of houses. So that's why I believe there should be some kind of mix, right? So of course, I mean, the problem again with this is this ecosystem thinking, smaller scale corporations, it's only accessible to a pretty small group of people, right? So with resources who can do it. So, and the scale of the housing market problems is so big that you actually might need way more state intervention and a bit return to the state level of thinking. Hope it answers your question. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Piotrek. My name is Colin Young. I'm majoring in international business management, and I want to ask about what do you do as a social entrepreneur to adapt to certain institutional policies? Like, from my understanding, in the Netherlands, there's like a lot of the previous and current cabinet. There's a lot of lack of support, or even policies that go against like the objectives of social entrepreneurs. Like, how do social entrepreneurs in Netherlands adapt to these sort of institutional conditions?
Yeah. Wait, I will. It works. It works. There are different ways of adaptation, right? So there is actually okay. To start maybe with the negative, because I encounter it pretty frequently. It's not like, oh, you know, there's a lot of big group of people who just keeps their distance from the state, from the municipality, from those official institutions. They just do their own thing. They don't want to have to do anything with this world where you have to, show what you're doing, what your results are. Try to organize it on a smaller way. Try to maybe also, sometimes it's also very interesting to come together more organically. So which is nice, maybe talk to some kind of other small local businesses, work together on a much smaller scale. However, of course, that's not like that's a kind of escape strategy, because you need resources, right? You need a proper resources, basically all kinds of human resources, financial resources. Without it, you cannot do it. So, of course, they will join those meetings we organize, for example, with our group, right, of this organization. They will try to skill themselves, right? So they will go to those meetings. You will see also sometimes that there are smaller, let's say, they try to negotiate, right? Because we need all kinds of policies, right? So, for example, even the procurement policy of municipality of big organizations, they try to push for it, right? So that, for example, if you're receiving, I don't know, the procurement from the municipality needs to be arranged, right? So that they don't buy just from a regular, economy, but actually help out those smaller enterprises. So they try to navigate it. They try to learn, adapt. I think it's necessity. In the Netherlands, it's very difficult to be outside of this kind of networks where everything is being done, right? So yeah, they are being skilled, and of course, a lot of is being done for those kind of entrepreneurs. But yeah, it remains really to be a challenge. So there are various, financing. Of course, we have all kinds of ways of trying to figure out how to finance each other differently, how to be less dependent on those big organizations. Insuring each other, for example. So again, some small cooperatives, for example, for insurance, that's already start to emerge. But yeah, there are really, systemic challenges. Basically, that's the most frustrating thing. Is eventually, yeah, you need, if you're a circular economy startup, you need much more systemic solutions. So it's very difficult for you to upscale or to survive without these proper institutions. But I think that happens way too little, right? So that's a problem with entrepreneurs. That's why I'm discussing those topics with you, actually, not about how to run the business, because there's way too little knowledge about this kind of institutional logic. So a lot of frustration from the social entrepreneurs is that they feel rejected by the system, that they don't listen to. They distrust completely the municipality and sometimes the bigger companies. And that you need to overcome. And that's, I think, for us still one of the bigger challenges to help people navigate in this environment. Yeah, is that answering your question? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I think it's time to close our discussions. So thank you once again, Mr. Patrick, for sharing your knowledge and valuable insight with us today. So we would like to thank our participants for joining and actively participating in this guest lecture. Now we should take a picture first. Shall we?
Oh, yeah.
In the middle that one.
Yeah. You can stand.
Terus di sini.
Stand here. I don't know.
Bisa kok gua. Eh, Oke, oke. Fokus sih Pak, pakai aja. Gini dapat sih Pak.
Jauh.
Jauh banget. Iya Pak. Alright, okay, stop. Okay, stop there. Okay. 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 Okay.
One, two.
Okay. Tinggal link absennya bisa diisi ya. Attendance formnya.